Welcome to the Rat Race to 5 podcast, where we discuss money, mindset, real estate investing, and ways to achieve financial independence. Whether you are a rookie or a veteran needing new ideas for investing or creating side hustles, you're in the right place. Here to challenge you to think out of the box, your hosts, Felipe Mejia and Diego Corzo.
Henry, welcome to the Rat Race to 5 podcast, dude. I'm super excited that you're here. Thanks so much for spending this morning with me. Usually I have Diego, my co-host, with me, and he actually got a last-minute speaking engagement, so he couldn't make it, but he sends his apologies. But Henry, honestly, dude, for those who have been living under a rock, tell us who you are. I mean, yeah, give us a little background on you, and then let's just get into it, man.
So I started investing about 4.5 years ago. I bought my first property because I learned through a series of wake-up calls that I just was not doing the things I needed to do with my money in order to provide my new family at the time, with the life that they deserved, and decided that I needed to make a change, started treating money differently, saving my money, and ended up buying my first rental property. And when I realized how powerful it was, because, man, we basically took, like monopoly money and used that as a down payment, and were able to like acquire this asset that started paying me. I only had $1,000 in my savings account when I bought that first property. And so to be able to kind of go from the circumstances that I had with bad credit and little to no money, and then acquire a property that was paying us, and then getting a line of credit on the equity from that property that I bought, and then using that to be able to buy more, like it just really showed me that, this real estate thing was super powerful, and that I needed to go bigger, not smaller. So from that point forward, we changed our goals. Our original goals were to buy 5 houses over the next 5 years. And we ended up doing like 5 deals that first month. And so we've just been going crazy ever since, man. It's been a wild ride. So I own about 70 rental properties. We flip about 10 houses a year. And then I just started documenting the journey. Just because, like, I mean, the story, man, like there's for brown folks, there's typically nobody in your family tree who's built wealth that kind of shares that information with you, and schools definitely don't share it, right? And so, like, I just didn't know that this was a possibility for me. I just thought this was a path like wealthy people or businesses or corporations took. I didn't know I could do it. And so once I saw how powerful it was, I just started documenting the journey on Instagram, and that's led to all kinds of craziness, man. And now I get to come on podcasts and host Bigger Pocket stuff, and it's just been a wild ride, man.
Man, that's awesome. And at Rat Race, our podcast, the Mastermind, like everything we do, we try to give a platform to anyone and everyone that has some type of real estate or business activity going on. But I try to focus, I don't want to say I try to focus on minority groups, but I definitely see that I kind of like gravitate more towards the underdog story. And anyone who says that it's not, they're crazy, right? Because it is harder for the minority group to get to into real estate or into business. It's just harder. It just is, because, and it's no one's fault but ourselves. So like for myself, I take the blame. But before we get into the whole like story of real estate and how you got to 70 doors and all that, I want the people that are going to be listening to kind of be able to attach themselves to your story. Give us a little background. Where'd you go to high school? Like what were you, a jock? Were you like, what kind of person were you in high school? Give us the college story. Like, give us some background about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Did you have like a rich uncle that got you the 70 doors? I mean, give us the sauce, man.
Yeah, no, man. So I grew up in Bakersfield, California. And my pops and my mom are college educated. And so they were like the first to be college educated in their families. And so that was a big deal for them. And so like that was always the path that they told us we were going to take. There wasn't an option. Like my options were, you're going to go to college or you're going to go to the military. Like that's, that's the path that they knew to be able to make money and take care of your family. Right. And so make money without having to work with your back, right? Like to be able to work with your mind. And so that's just what they instilled it in my sister and I, since we could remember, is that we were going to go to college. We had to get good grades so we can go to college, so we can get a job and we could, take care of our families and save for retirement. And so like grades were a huge deal for us. I was an athlete. I played basketball. My dad was a phenomenal basketball player. And so like I had a basketball in my hands before I could walk. And so I was playing ball my whole life. I ended up playing some played some JUCO ball, and then I ended up playing some semi-pro ball after college. So I kind of got to live out my pro ball dreams for a little bit. But my dad, was always, so he was a high school art teacher, right? And so teachers don't make a phenomenal salary. And so he always had a side hustle, man. He was just built like that. Yeah. Like before I was born, he used to grow plants at home. He's got a green thumb. And so he would grow plants at home, and then he would pot them and take them to the swap meet and sell them at the swap meet. Now everybody might not know what the swap meet is, but
Henry, I thought that was going a totally different way. I was
different kind of plants. I get it.
Okay.
These were legit, actual.
For those that know this podcast, know that I got kicked out of high school for selling dope. So I was like, we going that way? Because we can go that way. We can keep it gangster on the podcast, but I just want to know where we're going with this. Okay, swap meet. Yes, swap meet. I know what you're talking about. Keep going.
And so, and then he owned an arcade. So kind of like a passive business for what passive businesses could be back then, right? And so he owned an arcade. That was back when you had to go to a place to play video games. You couldn't just like walk in your room and turn on the most amazing video games, right? And so it was like basically like a big vending machine business that just operated in a strip mall with video games, and he would just go and service them, and that was about it. And then he owned a barbecue restaurant for most of my childhood. So for about 10 years of my childhood, he owned a barbecue restaurant. So I would see him go to work at school, and then after school or at lunch, on his lunch breaks, he would go shop for the restaurant, get them their supplies. And then after school, he'd go cook. Right. And so like I saw him hustle with these side businesses, and it was just my life. Like I didn't think, like I just thought people did that. Right. And he never talked to me about like owning my own business or having a side hustle or making my own money on the side. Like he didn't, like those weren't like, I don't want to say those weren't lessons he was teaching. He was teaching me through his actions, but he didn't like sit me down and say, hey, you go get a job, but you can also start your own business and do this. It wasn't those kind of conversations. I just saw him through doing. But I didn't realize the kind of seed that it planted until it was time for me to look into starting my own business and starting a real estate investment company. Because when I had my epiphany where I just said, hey, you know what, time to make a change. I got to do something. And I decided that real estate was the path. Like it never dawned on me that I couldn't do it. Like it just like, most people are scared. They think they might fail when they start a business. Like I never had those fears. I was just like, I'll just start an extra business because that's what I saw my dad do for my whole life. So I was like, when it was time to start a business, I didn't have that fear. I just did it. Right.
That's interesting because I'm kind of in the same boat. I always saw my parents like hustle 2 or 3 jobs to kind of get us ahead. And it's the same thing when I started in real estate. I never thought that I would fail. Like that wasn't even an option, really. Like you said, it wasn't ever there that I would fail. I think for me, Henry, it was more of the limiting beliefs of, do I deserve wealth?
Yes, absolutely.
That was my biggest stopping. Like, do I actually deserve this? And even to this day, Henry, I won't lie to you. Like when I walk into the VIP lounges at, just traveling or traveling first class or, vacations, like even sometimes I still get imposter syndrome. Like, do I deserve this?
Yeah.
But I never had the mental block of, am I going to fail at real estate because of the hustle that my parents got? When I mentor people at Rat Race, I always tell them, have you ever missed a mortgage payment? And they're like, no, I would never. I'm like, why do you think you're going to miss one with your rentals? I'm like, if you like, for me, if I don't have a tenant in place and I have to go Uber or flip a house or wholesale a deal, like I'm not going to lose my rental property. I've worked way too hard to get them. If I got to go out there and change the flooring because a contractor can't get out there next week and I need to get this place rented, like I'm going to go get on my hands and knees and make this work. It's like, I never questioned my ability to make it in real estate. My biggest issue was, imposter syndrome, or do I deserve this type of wealth, right? That comes with real estate, because real estate's going to make you wealthy, right? If you stick with it long enough. Did you ever have that, Henry? Like,
yeah, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I had imposter syndrome on so many levels, man. So I had it on the first time it really hit me like a ton of bricks was when I was developing my first course. Cause I didn't I developed my courses just as a means to like give people a way to get access to information inexpensively.
right.
And then if they went through that information, then I would be willing to kind of hop on a call or talk to them a little bit, because as my social media started to grow, I would get more requests. And before my social media grew, I would just answer everybody. And then as it grew, like I just couldn't keep up.
Right.
And so I was like, I'll put these courses out here for, $20, $30, $40. And then if you take the course and you still have questions, I'm happy to talk to you, because you've shown me that you're serious, right? You've put some money and time into learning what you want to do. And so, but I remember I was like writing the course, or, and I would do like a whole chapter when I first got started. And then I remember I get done with the chapter and I come reading through it, and I just delete the whole thing, because I'd be like, man, nobody wants to hear this. Like nobody's going to hear this. Nobody wants to hear this from me. Like, like they can go hear this from somebody else. Like, why would they want this from you? And I remember I must have wrote the first chapter of my first course maybe 3 or 4 times before I just was like, whatever, I'm going to put it out there and see how it does. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but like, that was my imposter syndrome kicking my butt, like thinking that people don't care what you have to say, or aren't going to want to learn from you, because who are you, right? You're just a dude. Nobody cares. Like there's so many other people out there who are smarter than you, or like, it's just that voice in the back of your head that I really had to battle with and learn to really just ignore, because it doesn't matter what you think you know or what you think you don't know. Like, there's an audience for you. There's somebody who can be inspired by you. It could be one person. It could be 1,000 people. It could be hundreds of thousands of people, but you won't know that until you put your message out there.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. It's same thing when we built our course and for those of you guys that are listening, Diego and I own Rat Race Defy the Mastermind. Henry Washington owns also a mastermind. He has a course. Definitely go check that out on his socials. We'll have all that in the links in the bio description below. But Henry, that was the same thing with us. Like when Diego and I first started, we were like, man, are people really going to care? Like to learn from us? We're not the typical, 60-year-old white man that owns 100 rentals, right? Like we own maybe half and we don't own huge apartment buildings, right? Like we know how to buy single family homes and maybe small 50 unit or under. Like, are we going to be relatable to people? But what we found out pretty quickly, Henry, was that like there is a lot of investors that look like us, but don't have like that role model, you could almost say, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't have someone to look up to that's not a Grant Cardone or, and shout out to these people, right? Like I'm not downing them at all, but even when I was first starting to learn, I was like, man, there's no Mexican real estate investors. Like it's all, bro. I used to think it was funny because like Cat Williams does this joke about like the presidents. He goes white, white, and then black. You've seen that one, right?
Yeah.
Bro, that's how it was for me when I was learning real estate, dog. I was like, white. Like, that's cool. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
Right.
But there's got to be like someone that knows like what it felt like coming up, anyway. So all that to say, like, that imposter syndrome definitely hit. And if you're out there and if you're an investor and you're an immigrant or brown or white, it doesn't matter, man. Just go out there and find your tribe. I think it's the most important thing you can do. And then just connect and start investing. So Henry, what would you say to that person out there that's scared to get started in real estate or has that imposter syndrome and hasn't got started because of that fear of like, oh, I can't buy real estate, man. That's for institutions or that's for rich folk. That's for those people, right? That's not for me. I'm stuck in my 9-to-5 forever. I'm lucky to make 6 figures. Like I should just do this for the rest of my life. Man. So like, bro, I know like, and I see the frustration in your face because I was the same way. And I know that you see hundreds of people like that. What do you say to someone that's like, oh, this is as far as I need to go. I don't need to aspire for more. I should be happy where I'm at.
Yeah, man. So what I tell those people is like, look, man, a seed's been planted in you, right? A seed's been planted in you by God. Because if not, you wouldn't even be asking these questions. You would just be going about your 9 to 5. You wouldn't be thinking, is there something more? Or I'm thinking about doing this, but maybe it's not for me. Well, that seed's been planted, and it's been planted for a reason, right? And so you have to trust that seed, that thought, that thing that won't leave you alone, that you keep thinking about and you keep pushing back because you think you don't deserve it, or because you think it's not for you, or because you think you can't do it. That's that voice trying to stop you from doing what God or the creator that you believe in wants you to do, right? Because if that seed's been planted, that means your tribe is out there, your audience is out there. There's somebody out there who needs you,
right?
Or else that seed wouldn't be planted. And maybe it's not like that you're supposed to become some big influencer and buy a bunch of property. No, maybe it's that you're supposed to buy property because there's somebody in your community you're supposed to provide housing to, right? Maybe you're supposed to do this because there's somebody in your community that's struggling even more than you are with these thoughts, and they need to see you do it so that they can do it. And it creates this ripple effect of people creating opportunities in housing and helping other people. Like, that seed has been planted for a reason. So you have to ignore the voice telling you to quit. You have to ignore the voice telling you it's not for you. You have to ignore the voice telling you you can't do it. You really have to put that in the back. And I heard something, I heard a clip from Mike Tyson the other day. He said when that doubt starts to creep in for him, he fights it, and he just fights it with positivity. And so every time like a doubtful thought creeps in his head, he just starts telling himself affirmations. No, this is for you. You're a champion. You're the best. You're a beast. No one can stop you. You can do this. And he just says those things out loud to counteract that negative thought with that positivity, to help him mentally get past it. And I thought that was so, like, just a little clever tip that we can all use. Like, when that voice creeps in there, just fight it with some positivity and keep moving forward. The other thing I tell you is like just take one step, right? Just take one step in that right direction. You don't have to know exactly what what your next series of 11 steps are going to be before you take the first one. Because I promise you, bro, like, the way I got my first deal done was nothing like the way I thought I was supposed to do my first deal, right? Like, but I didn't let my negative thoughts stop me. I made a decision that I was going to be a successful investor. And so when I started buying property, I took the first step just by telling people I was going to be an investor. The second step was getting around other local investors. And when that deal came to me, I didn't have the down payment money. I didn't have financing in place. And when he said, "Can you buy this?" I said, yes. Right. Even though I didn't know how. And so don't let you not knowing how stop you from saying yes and moving forward. Because I promise you, once you get a deal, once you get something that's going to get you motivated to go figure out what those next steps are, they might be different. That you might not know what they are because you haven't learned yet. That doesn't mean you can't get the deal done. Right? Like, don't let what you don't know stop you from being successful.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And back to what you were saying about the like your talents and what you have. I know, and not to get like religious, but I know like in the book of Matthew in the Bible, it talks about like the talents that God gives you and how like you use those, but it also impacts other people, like you were saying. So it's powerful to do that. And I remember I was in a conversation with Ryan Pineda, huge shout out to that guy. Follow him on Instagram if you don't already. I asked him like, yo, when is enough, right? For you? Cause like, I don't know when enough is for me because I built the system and it just keeps going. And there's two things that I learned from that conversation, because Ryan's a straight shooter and I love the guy, but he said two things. He said, number one, Felipe, cause I was also hinting to like, he was telling me how much he spends a month on his expenses and living and all that. And I was like, dang, that's a lot. Like, does it ever affect you in your faith? And he was like, well, it's interesting. Let's look at it. How much do you spend a month? And I told him, and he was like, and then he told me how much he spends. And he was like, so based on your net worth and your income, you spend like 50% more than I do monthly. And I was like, I never thought about it that way. Like, yeah, he spends in numbers way more than I do a month, but I spend more in percentages of my net worth. And he was like, so who's being a better steward? And I was like, whoa, that's huge. Lesson number one, right? And then lesson number two, when I asked him about when is enough, he basically was like, well, it's like this. what happens if I die and get to heaven and God is like, yo, with everything I gave you, I was expecting more. Like, you stopped at 45. I needed you to make a bigger impact and I gave you more talents to do so. So like when I think about slowing down or stopping, I think, okay, am I doing this because, am I slowing down because I want to spend more time with my son? Great.
Yeah.
Am I spending more time with my family? Great. Or why would I want to slow down? Yeah. If I have all the time in the world with my family that I want, but the systems and processes that I've built are continuing to grow, then it doesn't have to stop because it's the impact that the talent that God gave me to continue to go. So when those limiting beliefs get to me, when I'm like, oh, I'm not enough, or I shouldn't be this wealthy, or I shouldn't, and I'm not even calling myself wealthy. I'm just saying I have my time back. Like, I don't even deserve that. I think about like, well, you know, if you're given a talent and you don't use it to its potential, then technically didn't you waste that talent?
Absolutely.
So that's the affirmation that I give myself. It's like, okay, I'm giving this talent. I should be using it to the max, right? Because it's what was God given to me, or the universe, whatever you guys that are listening believe in. Don't waste the talent that has been given to you. So that's what I tell myself, Henry, to answer the question that I asked you as well.
I want to add, one thing to that. Like, I've always been able to at least understand that there's a little voice in my head telling me to do something. And I think that we all can kind of tune into that, or we all are aware, and it happens to all of us. And a lot of the times when it's something we don't want to deal with, we just are tuning it out. Like when the little voice in my head tells me I need to buy more property, I buy more property. When the little voice in my head tells me I need to, not eat that snack, I'm like, well, it's delicious, so I'll eat it. Right? Like we all hear it, right? And so when you tune into that, like, so when I bought my first property, it hit me like a ton of bricks, like I said, about like how wealth is truly created and how powerful this was. And my thought, like the feeling I was overwhelmed with, was that I have to share this. I didn't even know what that meant, right? I just was like, I felt like God was telling me I had to share this with people. And so the only thing I knew was to put it on social media. And but because I listened to that voice and I did what it was telling me to do, it's now led me to things like this, where I get to connect with you, where I get to, be on podcasts, where I've been on television. I've like all these things, like when I've listened and was a good steward of what he was telling me to do with the skills and the information that he'd given me, so that I could give it to more people, he's continued to bless me with more. So if you listen to that voice, if it's telling you, hey, buy this property, hey, talk to this guy about real estate, right? And you do that, I'm telling you, the little doors start to open up, and you'll see a path, man. Just like, if the doors don't open, you don't get discouraged, right? You can keep going. And if the doors are just shut in your face, maybe that means that's not the right path. Pivot a little bit, see what happens.
Yeah, I remember. So Henry, my goal during college, believe it or not, I know that earlier I talked about getting kicked out of high school for selling dope. After that, I couldn't go back to regular school, so I ended up going to a Christian school, which for like 99% of it I hated until the last like maybe 2 weeks. Where, anyways, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so like I wanted to be a police officer after that, and like for like the next 4 years of college and everything, I like dedicated my life and time to wanting to be a police officer. What was interesting was every door along the way was getting shut. Like, nope. And I couldn't figure out why. And I got into this position where I was like, oh, I just got to grind through it. I just got to like, no to this door. I got to go through this door, and I got to figure this out. And I got to figure this out. Dude, I did that for 4.5, almost 5 years, until I basically forced myself into the police academy. And 3 days in, they asked me to leave because they had enough, quote, we have enough Latino police officers to meet quota for this class. You can leave, end quote. Just like that, bro. No question. Like, I was like, you're not serious right now. Wow. And they were, and I couldn't go back. And then I found real estate, and real estate was just as hard as getting into the police department, but it felt different because I was actually on the path I felt that I was supposed to be on. So like a no wasn't a negative, it was a lesson learned.
Right.
So what I always tell people, it's like, okay, to know if you're on the right path, for yourself, and let's just call it business or real estate, are the no's lessons or are the no's just shut doors? And I think that little bit of information is enough to know the difference. So when the police department said, no, you can't be a cop, close the door, I didn't learn a lesson. It was just no. But when a banker tells me no to a loan, I'll never forget my first loan. I walked in and I asked, I'm not going to say her name. I asked the banker lady, I was like, can I get a loan for this house? And she said no. And then I was able to ask, why not? And she told me, your credit score is not high enough. You don't have enough money in the bank, and it was something, 2 years of work history. And I was like, oh, I can fix all that. So I did. And then I went back and still bought that house. And that house still is the highest cash flow house I have. So all that to say, Henry, is like my no became a lesson. And that changed it. And I knew I was on the right path when I could take lessons from my no's. And it's just blew up my real estate empire.
We're going to church today. I love
Let's go. This is not a religious podcast, I swear, but I just feel like me and Henry are on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, it's fun. I have the exact same bank story. The exact same. One of my first before I had bought a house, I went to a bank to see if they'd qualify me to buy a loan before I had a contract on one. And she pulled my information and she was like, "No, we can't lend to you." And I was so offended. And she was like, "No." She was like, "Well, let me tell you why." And she wrote me a detailed email and was like,
"I love that.
This is what we look for. This is where you're at. This is what we look for credit score. This is where you're at. This is." And I was just like, "Oh,
with your disrespectful ass." No,
right? Yeah, but it was like you're 100% right. It was a lesson, and I went and I fixed all those things. And that bank is my main bank today. They do almost all my loans.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What was your mindset in getting through? Because that's discouraging, bro. Because I didn't get the email, but I got the talk. Like she momed me. She was like, "Felipe, your credit score sucks. This is where you're at. You need to fix this before you come back in here." And I was like, "Oh, snap."
Yeah.
But when I left, I felt encouraged. Like, okay, I can fix these problems.
Yep.
I can't fix growing up broke. I can't fix being uneducated, or I can fix being uneducated in real estate by going to get educated. I can fix like all these things. So what was your mindset when you got that email?
Yeah, man, I was super discouraged. Like I was angry, and then I was super discouraged. And then I realized, like, after I took my emotions out of it, I'm like, she wasn't telling me, no, I can't lend to you. She was telling me I can't lend to you, and here's why. So that I can lend to you later. She didn't say never come back here. Yeah. She just said, we look for this and here's where you are, which told me that if I can get into the category, then I become bankable. And I just never, like, I had never had those lessons, and nobody had ever told me. And so people, like, that's the beautiful thing, that you were smart enough to ask. You asked why. I was lucky enough that she told me. But I tell my students all the time, I'm like, if you get denied, just ask them why. They'll tell you why, and then go fix the problem if you can fix it. Right. And it's phenomenal. So it was discouraging and encouraging at the same time, because I immediately went and I fixed those things. So what happened was there were some things on my credit that were causing my score to be low. And I had they were debts that I didn't want to pay, because I didn't feel like it was from when I was a renter, and they were charging me for things that somebody else did. Make a really long story short. And so I just said, well, screw y'all. I'm not paying that, not thinking about how that's impacting me on my credit. I didn't need my credit that much before that. So like, I was like, whatever. Right. And then now, you know, as someone who wants to buy property and I need to leverage my credit a lot more, I had to make a decision. And that decision was, go try to fight these people. Maybe it goes to court. Maybe they remove it. Maybe they don't. Or shut up and pay it. Right. I told people in a store one time, I was like, I got a real good credit hack for y'all. For those of you who are trying to buy property and your credit's slowing you down. I was like, go pull a credit report and look at all the things that you owe that are causing you to pull your credit down. Pay that.
No, you didn't just tell them the secret to get your credit high. No, you didn't just drop the secret to getting your credit back to normal.
It's that hack is undefeated. Simple. Right. And so like, and I had to like take my emotions out of it. Who cares who was right and who was wrong at this point?
Oh, it's a prideful
thing. This is a stepping stone to wealth.
Henry, say I'm wrong. It's a pride thing that you don't want to pay that. Whether you're right or wrong, it's holding you back from what you want. And it's as simple as, okay, that $1,000, that $2,000 bill that you have, that you're like, no, I'm not going to pay that. It's like that is holding you back from investing in a $500,000 property at 10% down, 20% down.
Yes.
It's like when people don't want to pay taxes. I'm like, look, taxes are a two-edged sword. If you are getting a check back from your taxes, you're probably not going to be investing, my guy.
Right.
If you are paying a little bit into the government of your taxes, then you're probably going to be investing. Now, on the other side of that, like once you become a sophisticated investor, then like me and Henry, we pay a little bit less in taxes because we cost seg, but that's all down the road.
Right.
But when you're starting out, dude, you're going to pay the piper.
That's it.
Uncle Sam's going to get his money. You got to drop the pride thing, pay the money to borrow more money. And it starts with, at first, yes, your credit score.
Yeah, man. Big, and it, you know, and I'm glad I learned that lesson. You know, we'll be 100% real. I'm gonna share everything with everybody. Look, man, I had a medical debt, a recent medical debt, right? Long story short, they billed it. My insurance billed it incorrectly. I had two forms of insurance and they billed it backwards. And so both companies denied the claim. And so I've been fighting with them to get them to switch it up and so that it gets covered. And without me knowing it, even while we were fighting it, they sent it to collections. And it negative, and I didn't know. And so my credit score came down pretty substantially. And my banker called me and was like, hey, what's up with your credit? And I was like, nothing. Right. And so she was like, hey, this is on here. And so I had a decision to make. It was $6,000, which is, you know, that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
most people.
Absolutely.
And I could have called the insurance company and pitched a fit and said, y'all need to fix this. But at the end of the day, that could have taken, you know, 120 days, 6 months, a year. Who knows how long that would take for them to fix what they got to fix and get it going. So I paid it. Right. Should I have had to pay it? Absolutely not.
Agreed.
I am 100% in the right.
Yeah.
But I still had to pay it because my business, like I'm in the business of building wealth through real estate. My credit's important, right? My business is important. And it doesn't matter. Pride doesn't matter at that point. What matters is being able to continue to grow and scale my business so that I can continue to build wealth for my family and so that I continue to inspire other people to do the same. You've got to swallow your pride sometimes.
Bro, and that's the why that I don't think many real estate investors, I don't think any guru or trainer or course maker, whatever, has been able to tangibly or put on paper. What is that? And let's try. What is that why? What is that secret sauce that everyone talks about that you're talking about right now? Because I have it too. Nothing is going to disrupt my why, even myself. Even myself's pride is not going to self-destruct the mission that I have for real estate. If I have to pay a $6,000 medical bill because my insurance messed up and it's affecting my ability to invest, I guarantee you I'm digging into my pocket to pay for it. Yep. But Henry, what is that? What do you call that we have that I wish I could show other people how to do? Or I get that all the time, Henry, where it's like, yeah, dude, but I have this like thing that's on my credit, or I have this medical bill, or the loan on my student debt is high and I'm just not going to pay it because I don't feel like this. I'm like, so you're literally letting that stop you from investing in real estate. Like, what is that? Like, how do we help people get rid of that? Because Henry, I guarantee you a lot of people still have that issue.
Yeah, man. So I think that's a two-part question, right? Because helping people get rid of it and then looking for people that have it are like two different things.
Okay.
And so like when I am looking to work with people in my mentorship group, right? The thing that I found that the people that have it is they're looking to build wealth for more than just themselves, right? It's not about just them. And so when I work with those people who are doing this because, hey, I've got to retire my mom. She works too hard and I've got to get my passive income stream up so that I can take care of her living expenses, right? Or I'm doing this so that I can understand real estate, get some cash flow so that I can create housing for women coming out of abusive relationships, like my mom or my sister or somebody was in an abusive relationship, and that means something to me. So I need to do this so I can do that, right? And so when I work with people whose why is beyond them, they are the ones that I find who have that thing. right? Who have that thing that we're talking about, that
Right.
it's these things aren't going to stop. I'm not even going to get in my own way because my purpose isn't for me. I get to be the recipient of the benefits of my purpose, and I get to utilize that and enjoy those things, but it's not for me.
Wait, say that again, because I know people are going to miss that. And that just really did a light bulb in my head.
Yeah.
That is a light bulb nugget moment. Say that part again, where I am the recipient. Yeah. Go for it.
Yes. So if your why, if your reason for doing what you're doing is bigger than you, you're not going to let anything stop you. You're not going to let yourself stop you. You're not going to let other people stop you, because you're doing this for something larger than yourself. But the beauty of the wealth that you're building is that you still get to be the recipient of that wealth. You get to utilize that wealth, but you are doing it so that you can share or give or build for others. And so we're blessed to be able, like I'm blessed to be able to live a wonderful life because of the wealth that I'm building. But I keep going and I don't let anything stop me, because the purpose of the wealth isn't for me. It's for somebody else. So don't just focus on, I need to get wealthy so that I can do this for me. If that focus is on somebody else, you still get to do all the awesome things that wealth creates. But when your purpose is bigger than you, nothing stops you. And you get to, I think we live up to higher than our full potential, because it's not about us. And so you need something that's going to push you, right? And for us, if it was just about us, we'd hit that limit of, this is the lifestyle that I want. And so now I can stop and I can go sit on the beach and enjoy my lifestyle. But like you and I talked about earlier, knowing when to stop. Well, if your purpose is beyond you, if your purpose is to educate others, if your purpose is to build housing for impoverished communities, if your purpose is to, take care of veterans that come back from overseas and have PTSD, right? Like if that's your purpose, like it's so much, but you're going to push yourself so much further than you even thought you could.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. And I really like the mentality that boxers have when they're training for a fight, where like you don't win in the ring, you win while you're training and when you beat yourself in the mirror. Like it has to be more than you. If you go in there to win for yourself, you're going to lose. If you go into real estate to get rich for yourself, I just don't see you getting far. Because the moment a toilet breaks at 2 a.m, the moment you're losing money on a rental, you're not going to see the big picture. When you have a bigger reason to invest than yourself, that's when you're going to do it. And I think for me, it was like that desire to get my family ahead. And I'll never forget what Diego said. So actually, let's be super transparent and vulnerable here. I was investing in real estate before my son was born, and I was making headway. I got wealthy and my time back, rich, whatever you want to call it, after my son was born. Why? So my son was born with something called sensory processing disorder. So for the first 2 years of his life, he would wake up every 2 hours. So he never slept a lot. So like at 12, he would wake up at 2 or 3, wake up at 4 or 5, wake up at 9, go to sleep. And it was consistent like this for 2 years. And I don't mean crying. I mean like yelling. Like we would go to the hospital sometimes like, yo, is he okay? Like this isn't normal. Like, and Henry, enough to say like, we don't want to have a second baby. And like, I have a desire for another kid, but like with the fear that we got with my son, now he's, awesome. Like now he's great. But like those first 2 years were so dreadful, dude. Like I don't even remember those 2 years.
Yeah, man.
So I knew that if I wanted to keep my marriage, keep my family, be there to help my wife with my son, because I was like, what if he's like this for the rest of his life? I don't have the luxury of going to work, if that makes sense. I can't be gone from the house for 8 hours a day because my son and my wife need me at home because she needs a break. I need a break. Like we couldn't even go to the grocery store, Henry, because Like my son wouldn't get in the car. He would cry the whole way there, cry all the way back. It was crazy, bro.
Yeah.
So I had to get rich. I didn't have like, there wasn't a plan B.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. Like if I get down to it, that's why I got wealthy. I don't know if I've ever said that before out loud. It was because my son's infancy was, it's weird to say out loud this way, but it's probably the most growing up fastest I've ever had to do. It was like live or die, like fight or flight type, dude. It was wild, but I didn't have an exit. It was like, dude, you got to get rich because you got to be home. Right.
Yes.
So like you have to find that for it to work out. And that's what it was for me. I mean, ultimately it was like, dude, if I don't get rich, I'm going to lose my family. Like, cause we're not going to make it past this.
And I want people to think too, like if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're like, man, well, I don't really have that, but I've already gotten started. Or I don't want to stop me or aren't that to stop me from getting started. That's awesome. Continue to start. Yes. But open, like have that thought every morning when you wake up, write it down, say, what am I doing this for that's larger than me? Because I promise you, if you're taking these steps, that thing is there. God wants you to have that thing. It's there. Mm-hmm. Your brain hasn't opened up to it yet. It's just, you haven't seen it yet because your brain's not opened up to it. So once you open your mind up to figuring out what that thing is, it'll hit you like a ton of bricks one day. And you'll be like, this is why I'm supposed to build wealth. Yeah. This exact reason right here. Open your mind. It's there. It's there. Don't be discouraged if you don't feel like you have it. It's there. Just open your brain up to it.
I always tell my mentees at Rat Race that I had almost an anxiety to get wealthy. Like every morning it was like, holy shit, I got to go do this. Like, if not, like, I don't know, like you got to find that anxiety, that desire inside of you that God's already put there if you have it, and you just got to put gas on the flame. It's there. You just have to like tap into it and go. Henry, I have 2 questions before we get off this podcast because I don't want to take up your whole day. Number 1, what's with the color purple? I see it everywhere around you. Yeah. Like what is the color purple, man? I love it. It pops. What is it?
Yeah, man. You know, no one's ever asked me that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that question. Yeah, man. So, I mean, you've heard me kind of tell my story before. But the way I got into real estate was I had a panic attack at 3 a.m. because I realized. Oh,
that's right.
Yeah, I realized that, you know, after having a conversation with my wife being newly married, we talked about dream homes and we talked about vacations we would go on. And I realized like, I don't have the funds to do any of this. I don't have the savings. I don't have the, like, I can't provide what she wants. Right. And so part of my initial reason why was I knew I had to change because I needed to give her the life that she deserved.
Come on.
And so that was part of what got me started. And then once I got my first deal under contract, I went to the bank and I needed $20,000 to buy the property for my down payment. I only had $1,000 in savings, so I needed $19,000. And so, you know, kind of funny. So 2 things. When I woke up from that panic attack, I woke up from that panic attack at 3 a.m. I told my wife, "Hey, we're going to be real estate investors." Mind you, this is a guy who had bad credit, couldn't even be on the loan for the house that we were currently living in, didn't know how to handle any money. And I told my wife, we're going to buy rental properties. And she was like, "All right, come on, let's do it." Right.
Oh, really? At 3 a.m?
No doubt. She was like, yeah, let's do this.
You got to keep it, bro.
And so then we fast forward. I got my first deal. I need that $19,000 because I only have one. And what I ended up learning that I could do was take out a loan against a 401k to borrow that money. And then you be your own bank because you're borrowing your own money and you're paying yourself back with interest. But I was financially irresponsible. I didn't have a 401k. So I had to go to my wife and say, "Hey, remember when I said we were going to be real estate investors? Well, for us to buy this house, we need to borrow $19,000 from you."
Maybe we should be interviewing Henry's wife,
right? Absolutely,
she's the real sauce.
She's and so no doubt, Felipe. At the second I said we need to borrow 19 from your 401k, she was like, "All right, let's do it." And we bought that property, and that property changed our life forever. And so I would not be here without her. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do this without her encouragement and support. I literally couldn't have bought my first property without her trusting me enough to let me borrow her hard saved 401k funds to buy our first rental property.
Yeah.
You know, and so purple is her favorite color. And so I knew once we started a business, I wanted, you know, like some representation of her in the logo and something I see every day.
Man, that's so cool. Have you ever told that story?
I've never told that to anybody.
Dang, that's dope. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So represent the purple. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's huge. I wasn't expecting that. So totally caught me off guard. That's amazing. One, I think we need to be interviewing your wife, bro. I think we got the wrong person
facts,
on that mic. Because
facts. That's 100% right. You absolutely.
It sounds
right.
like, it's funny. I'm the same way. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my wife. My wife actually slid into Brandon Turner's DMs on my birthday when the first year my son was born. And like I said earlier, like it was really hard on us. So she couldn't even leave to get me a birthday present. So what she did was she slid into Brandon Turner's DMs and was like, yo, can you give Felipe 30 minutes of your time for his birthday? And Brandon actually wrote back and was like, I can't on his birthday because his birthday is the same as my wife's, but I will the next day. So the only reason Brandon Turner replied was because me and Brandon Turner's wife have the same birthday. So there was like a small like correlation there. Yeah. And that conversation changed my life. Yeah. And from there but it was like my wife taking an action with me. And then from there, her encouraging me and believing in me every single day. So I agree 100%. Like everything I've built is because of my wife. No questions asked. Now, my second question, what are some things, because you have a mastermind, you lead a group of guys and girls through real estate and business. What are a couple of things that you see in people that you're like, yeah, he or she's going to make it, or I'm not so sure? What are some of those key factors that you see in people that you're like, I think he's really, or she's really going to make it? Because we've all seen it, right?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. Besides what we talked about earlier, which is wanting to do something bigger than just making money for themselves. Right. Because that's absolutely a huge factor. And when I know somebody's going to make it, when I'm interviewing them on a phone call to join my mastermind and they tell me a why that's bigger than them, I'm like, oh, they're going to crush it. Oh yeah. And 9 times out of 10, they do. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, Felipe, is how quick they are to take action. Right. That's huge. If they jump in the first day and they're already applying the things that we're teaching, the success comes so much faster for them. And then once they get that first taste of success, like people don't realize that first taste of success, that proof of concept, it lights you up. And then they just go bigger. So the ones who take action immediately, even if they don't get results right away, I know I'm like, they're going to kill it. Here it comes, because they took action right away. They didn't try to figure all the steps out first. They just said, I'm going to take this first lesson I'm learning and I'm putting it to work. And so just taking action without having to know everything, that's the next step right away. Those people, they kick butt. And the last thing I see is, and it takes a little longer to see this, but the ones who are relentlessly consistent in their pursuit, regardless of the success that it's yielding, right? So I'll have some students that get started and it doesn't produce the results right away that they want. And then they take their foot off the gas, or they try to spend a little less money, or they try to put a little less time into it. Yeah. And I immediately go like, those are the ones I got to jump in and kind of, punch them in the gut a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the ones who don't hesitate or even put their foot on the gas a little more, even when they first get started and it's not working out the way they want, they take it to the moon.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I would add on my end, one of the most, I'll go with partnerships. One of the most successful partnerships I've seen is when you get a very, very smart, analytical, obviously an A+ student, and you get a C or D student. Mm-hmm. And if they somehow can connect, those people I have seen blow up, because you got a visionary and an implementer, or an integrator and a visionary that come together and they can just crush it. In partnerships, and there's a book called Rocket Fuel that Diego and I read. Mm-hmm. That is the other thing where I've seen where I'm like, if these two people, and I see it on my mastermind, I'm like, if you and you get in a breakout room together and connect, you guys are about to crush it. So in my opinion, when somebody is, I don't want to say too smart for their own good, mm-hmm. but I have had people like reach out to me for some one-on-ones and they'll be like, Felipe, I don't know about this deal. The cash on this deal is this much. and I lost a deal that had this much more cash on cash. And I'm like, okay, let's take that away for a second. If your because that's going to change next year, your cash on cash. If your cash flow is still there, would you buy that deal? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, then go buy it, bro. Buy that deal. Does it cash flow $500 from day one or more on a single family home? Yeah, but the cash on cash is this much less. I'm like, look, dude, I'm not saying go spend $1 billion on a property to cash flow $500 because that's just dumb. But if you're going to spend $300,000 or $320,000 and you're going to make $500 cash flow, guess which house I'm buying? And they'll usually say the $300,000 one. And I say, no, I'm buying both. And it like, right. Like, oh yeah. I'm like, dude, it's still $500,000.
It's still a good deal, bro. Yes.
Like you're going to get loan pay down. You're like, no, I'm not buying one. I'm buying both. And like, they start to understand that concept of like, just get started, man. It's worth it. It's there. Would you agree?
100%, man. I love that. And because yes, 100. I get questions all the time from students that are nitpicking over a deal. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, what more are you looking for? Like, if you're not going to buy this, why even buy anything?
100%. I agree. They always want a home run. Every deal has to be a home run. I'm like, dude, I've built my wealth off base hits.
Right. That's like, it, man.
I've bought, I would say and this is probably goes against the grain, but I've bought a majority of my properties just off the MLS.
Yeah.
Just straight up. Now I'm getting savvier and going wholesaling and doing all this other stuff. But when I started MLS, bro, like 9, 10 of my houses, MLS, when I started, because I didn't know any better, but I got started, which is the important part.
Right. And that's, people. So I had this conversation with a student just the other day, where they were over analyzing a deal. And at the end of the day, it was a single family home, a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot brick, classic house. They were paying sub 200 for it. It was going to rent well over 1%. And they didn't like, the cash flow. And it wasn't a home run cash flow deal. And I was like, and it wasn't going to net them a huge flip profit. But I'm like, bro, like at the end of the day, if your worst case scenario is because it's not going to net you, 60 grand on a flip, so you throw a tenant in it and it makes you, 1.5%, 2.5%, 3%. Worst case scenario. Like, what are we having a conversation about? Buy the house. Like, your worst case scenario is an awesome cash flowing rental. Like, just buy the house. Buy it.
Right. Get off my Zoom. Go buy
real estate's amazing. Even if you buy a bad deal, if you keep it long enough, it'll be a good deal soon.
I love that saying. I think Brandon said that. Yeah. Last thing, and then we can get out of here because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. I spoke to a good friend of mine in real estate, and I was asking him because I was getting a little frustrated with my Rat Race to 5 Mastermind, my members. It seemed like a lot of people were taking action, but there was this like group of people that just weren't for some reason. And they had, bro, all of them or most of them over 6 figures, great credit score. Everything was cush. So I asked, like, why do you think, and how can I get through to them? And he said, they're comfortable. They don't need cash flow. They don't need rentals. They don't need the headache. They want the wealth, but they don't want the headache that comes with it because they don't need it.
Yep.
So if you're out there listening, the most dangerous place to be when you're going to start investing in real estate is comfortable. If you are comfortable, you are not going to get started because you don't need it. I was on a recent mastermind privately with our Rat Race members, and one of the guys got into the hot seat, which the hot seat is where we allow you to go up and tell the whole group what your biggest issue with real estate is. One of the guys that got up there, I won't say his name. One of the guys that got up there was like, man, I've been in Rat Race for a year and I haven't bought a rental. And like, I got really discouraged. I was like, wow, I spend over 100 days on Rat Race, Monday and Wednesday, twice a week, and you haven't done anything? What happened? So we dug into his story. He lives down south. He makes well over $100,000 a year. He lives in a high rise. He's got a great job, perfect girlfriend. Everything is great. And I looked at him square in his face and I said, it's because you're comfortable, bro. You don't need real estate. You have a great job. You're among the top 1% earners in your city. You live in a great area. You don't need it. And he agreed. He's like, wow, I never thought about it like that. I'm like, the reason you're not doing it is because what does $500 look like to someone making 6 figures in the South? Like, you don't need the money. So all that to say, guys, if you're listening, if you haven't got started and you're a high income earner, it's probably because you're comfortable. So make sure you get out of your comfort zone, start investing. It's totally worth it.
Amen.
Let's do it. Henry, thank you so much for your time. Before we get out of here though, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, best place to connect with me is Instagram. I'm at the Henry Washington on Instagram, and you can check my website, henrywashington.com.
I will make sure to have all those in the bio. Henry, thank you so much for your time, brother. I'll let you get out of here.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you.
The Rat Race to 5 podcast, where we discuss money, mindset, real estate investing, and ways to achieve financial independence. Whether you are a rookie or a veteran needing new ideas for investing or creating side hustles, you're in the right place.